Have you ever noticed how some people hit a certain amount of savings and suddenly their entire life seems to move faster, even though they didn't get a raise or change jobs? They start making better decisions, taking smarter risks, and somehow opportunities begin showing up at the right time. Nothing about their personality changed overnight, and they didn't unlock some secret investment trick. What changed was something much quieter, something most people never talk about. It's a point where stress drops, thinking gets clearer, and money stops feeling like an emergency and starts feeling like a tool. And once you cross it, the rules you've been playing by no longer apply. Stay tuned as we break down why everything changes even more after you hit $20,000, and how that single milestone reshapes your choices, your confidence, and your future in ways most people completely miss. You know that moment when you realize the number in your account isn't just sitting there anymore? It's actually changing how people treat you. Not because they know the number, but because of how you move, how you talk, how you pause before answering. That pause didn't exist before 20,000. Before that, most answers came fast. Too fast, because speed felt like safety. After 20,000, speed stops feeling necessary, and that's where everything really starts to change. There's a study from Princeton that gets quoted a lot, but almost always in the wrong way. Back in 2010, Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton looked at emotional well-being and income. They found that day-to-day happiness rises with income but levels off around $75,000 a year. People ran with that number like it was a finish line. What most people missed is the mechanism behind it. It wasn't about luxury. It was about stress reduction. Bills paid, emergencies handled, choices available. That same mechanism shows up way earlier than $75,000, and $20,000 is where it first becomes noticeable. Before that point, your financial life is fragile. One hit can knock you sideways. A $900 car repair wipes out months of effort. A missed paycheck creates panic. The Federal Reserve's own data shows that nearly 37% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. That number hasn't changed much in over a decade. That's not because people are lazy, it's because living without buffer keeps you stuck in short-term thinking. 20,000 is where fragility turns into resilience. And resilience changes behavior faster than income ever will. Take Warren Buffett. Everyone knows the billionaire version. What almost no one talks about is how boring his early financial life was. Buffett hit his first $100,000 in the early 1950s, which adjusted for inflation is roughly $1.2 million today. But the key detail is how long it took him to get there. He spent years saving, investing small amounts, reinvesting profits, and living far below what he could afford. By his own admission, the hardest part of his wealth journey was the beginning. Once the base was built, the growth became almost automatic. That base doesn't need to be $1 million. For regular people, 20,000 plays the same role on a smaller scale. Here's why. Once you have that cushion, your decisions stop being forced. Before, you don't choose. You comply. You take what's available. You say yes because no feels dangerous. That's not a character flaw. That's math. After 20,000, choice enters the picture. You can say no to a job offer that underpays you. You can leave a toxic workplace without lining up something immediately. You can take a few months to reskill. That flexibility doesn't just improve your quality of life. It increases your lifetime earnings. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that workers who change jobs voluntarily rather than out of necessity earn on average 10 to 20% more over their careers. Voluntary mobility pays. Forced mobility doesn't. You can't be voluntarily mobile without savings. This is where the second shift kicks in. Your income trajectory changes. Before 20,000, income growth is limited by fear. You stick with what you know. You avoid uncertainty. You prioritize stability over upside. After that point, income growth becomes intentional. You start asking better questions. Is this role teaching me something valuable? Is this pay structure scalable? Is this skill transferable? Those questions don't show up when you're just trying to survive the month. There's a reason so many people stay underpaid for years, even when better options exist. It's not lack of talent, it's lack of margin. Margin gives you leverage. Leverage changes outcomes. Another thing that shifts hard is how debt feels. Before 20,000, debt feels suffocating. Every balance feels heavy. Interest feels personal. You think about it constantly. After 20,000, debt becomes a calculation. You start distinguishing between bad debt and tolerable debt. High-interest credit cards still look ugly, but a low-rate student loan or mortgage stops feeling like a monster. You can plan. You can optimize. You can decide instead of react. That mental shift matters because panic leads to bad financial moves. People pay off low-interest debt early while ignoring higher-return investments because fear tells them debt is evil. People drain savings to feel clean and end up exposed again months later. Once you have 20,000, fear loosens its grip and math gets louder. Math wins over time. Let's talk numbers for a second, because this is where people underestimate how powerful this stage really is. Say you have $20,000 invested in a broad market index fund. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned about 10% annually before inflation, closer to 7% after inflation. At 7%, $20,000 generates about $1,400 a year without you lifting a finger. That doesn't sound life-changing, and by itself, it isn't. But here's what changes. That $1,400 covers a month of rent in many cities. It covers insurance premiums. It covers groceries for a family for weeks. It absorbs shocks. More importantly, it shows you proof that money can work without your direct effort. That proof rewires how you think. Psychologists call this self-efficacy. When you see that your actions produce predictable results, you're more likely to repeat them. Saving stops feeling pointless. Investing stops feeling abstract. You're no longer hoping the system works. You're watching it work. That feedback loop is addictive in the best way. It's also why people who cross this threshold tend to accelerate faster afterward. Another real example. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, didn't grow up wealthy. She worked door-to-door selling fax machines. She saved aggressively. When she invested $5,000 to start Spanx, that wasn't reckless optimism. That was calculated risk backed by savings. She has said many times that knowing she wouldn't be ruined if it failed gave her the confidence to try. That confidence came from having a buffer. Most people never try because failure would cost them too much. 20,000 lowers the cost of failure. And lowering the cost of failure increases experimentation. Experimentation is where breakthroughs come from. Now let's talk about stress, because this is the part nobody measures properly. The American Psychological Association consistently reports money as the top source of stress for adults. Chronic stress doesn't just feel bad, it degrades decision-making. It shrinks attention spans. It increases impulsivity. When you're stressed, your brain prioritizes short-term relief. That's why people overspend when they're anxious. That's why they avoid opening bills. That's why they procrastinate on financial planning. Once you cross 20,000, baseline stress drops. Not disappears, drops. That drop is enough to restore executive function. You think more clearly, you plan better, you follow through more consistently. That's not motivation, that's biology, and it compounds. Another shift that happens quietly is how you think about freedom. Before, freedom feels like a fantasy, something for other people, something tied to huge numbers. After 20,000, freedom feels partial, but real. You realize you already have some control. You can take time off. You can say no. You can slow down without collapsing. Partial freedom is dangerous in a good way. Once you taste it, you want more of it. And instead of chasing random money goals, you start building systems that protect your time. This is where people start caring about things like passive income, flexible work, and lifestyle design. not because they're trendy, but because they've experienced enough security to want more autonomy. Autonomy is addictive. That's also when you stop chasing shiny objects. Before, get-rich-quick ideas look tempting because they promise escape. After 20,000, they look risky and unnecessary. You don't need a miracle anymore. You need consistency. Consistency beats intensity every time. There's also a big shift in identity. Before, you might see yourself as bad with money or just getting by. Those labels stick because your environment reinforces them. After 20,000, those labels stop fitting. You have evidence. You saved. You planned. You stuck with it. That identity shift matters because people act in ways that match who they think they are. If you see yourself as someone who builds stability, you'll keep doing the things that create it. This is why the first big milestone matters more psychologically than later ones. Going from 0 to 20,000 requires changing habits. Going from 20 to 40,000 requires repeating them. Repetition is easier than transformation. Another real data point. A study from Vanguard found that households with emergency savings of 3 to 6 months were far more likely to invest consistently, even during market downturns. They didn't panic sell. They didn't stop contributions. They stayed the course. That behavior difference alone can add hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. The market rewards patience. Patience requires safety. 20,000 buys safety. It also buys perspective. Before, every financial mistake feels like proof you're failing. After, mistakes feel like tuition. You paid to learn something, and you can afford the lesson. That mindset keeps people moving forward instead of quitting. Let's look at a real story most people don't know. Ronald Read was a janitor and gas station attendant in Vermont. When he died in 2014, he left behind an estate worth over $8 million. He never earned a high salary. He lived simply. He invested consistently over decades. But the key detail is that once he built a base, he never broke it. He didn't chase lifestyle inflation. He didn't panic during downturns. He let time do the work. He crossed his version of 20,000 early and stayed calm afterward. That calm was the edge. This is also where long-term thinking finally feels possible. Before, 5-year plans feel unrealistic. After, they feel practical. You start thinking about things like retirement accounts, tax efficiency, asset allocation. Not because someone told you to, but because now it actually matters. A tax deduction on $2,000 feels minor. A tax strategy on $20,000 feels useful. That's another reason everything changes after this point. Optimization finally pays off. Before, optimization feels like overkill. After, it's leverage. And once you start optimizing, you don't stop at money. You optimize sleep, health, schedule, energy. Those improvements feed back into earning potential and decision quality. It's all connected. At this stage, wealth building stops being about accumulation and starts being about alignment. Your money aligns with your values. Your work aligns with your strengths. Your time aligns with what you care about. That alignment reduces friction. Reduced friction increases momentum. Momentum makes progress feel easier even when the effort stays the same. This is why people who hit 20,000 often describe a sense of relief mixed with motivation. They're not done. They're just finally out of the hardest part. The climb from 0 is steep because gravity is against you. After 20,000, gravity starts helping. Not dramatically, gradually, but gradually is enough. Because time is on your side now, and once time is on your side, everything changes even more. You stop fighting just to stay afloat, and you start moving with direction. Each decision adds weight in your favor instead of draining you. That's when progress stops feeling fragile and starts feeling steady. If this video changed the way you think about money, even a little, let me know by hitting the like button. It helps more than you think, and it tells me you want more content like this. If you're trying to build real stability instead of chasing shortcuts, make sure you subscribe because the next videos go even deeper into how this actually works in real life. Drop a comment and tell me where you are on your own journey right now, and I'll see you in the next one.